Esperance is a little over 700 kilometres from the state capital Perth. It is quite isolated. It's the most important town in the southeast of WA, and there's nothing to match it for 400 kilometres north until you reach Kalgoorlie, and almost 460 kilometres to the west, where you reach Katanning. Its importance to the area it is situated in can't be overstated. In addition to that, the area around the town has some of the most spectacular beaches you'll ever see. People rave on about Cable Beach in Broome, but it doesn't compare at all with the beaches between Esperance and Orleans Bay. I would even go so far as to say that the area includes the most beautiful stretch of coastline in Western Australia. There are also some good campsites near Esperance, within about 70 to 90 kilometres each side. Some are national park sites like Stokes Inlet and Cape Legrand, but others, like Quaggy, are run by the local council. All are nice and worth visiting. Off the coast of Esperance lies the archipelago of the Recherche. Recherche is a French name for research and comes from one of the two frigates that visited. We'll have a bit more of a look at that when we get to the history section of the video. Here, 100 islands and 1,500 islets stretch along the coast for some 200 kilometres. The sea here has been harvested for creatures such as southern rock lobster, saucer scallops, abalone, shark and pilchards. Sadly, in the past, there was also a lot of sealing and whaling along the coast. Few of the islands are habitable, but one close to Esperance, known as Woody Island, have catered for overnight accommodation. Between July and November, southern right whales can be seen in the waters around Esperance. The whales visit this area to give birth. Australian sea lions and New Zealand fur seals are also plentiful in this area, and their breeding colonies here are the largest in the state. While nature has possibly put on one of the most spectacular areas in the state for you to marvel at, there are also some man-made attractions that are worth checking out while you're in the area. The Museum Park Period Village can be found between the Esplanade and Dempster Street, near the centre of town. Markets are held every second Sunday between 8:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. A growers' market is held every second Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. near the Scout Hall on the Esplanade. The village is a collection of relocated historic buildings, including the old railway station, former doctor's surgery, a schoolmaster's house, a church, and a private home. There's also a cafe, art gallery, craft shop, and the Visitors Information Centre. The village and the information centre are open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, and 9 a.m. to 12 noon on Sunday. Another interesting place to visit is the Esperance Museum. The museum was established in 1975 and can be found at 77 Windich Street. Here you'll find a large collection of local memorabilia, including a 1951 coal-fired locomotive. There are also items recovered from shipwrecks and some rather unremarkable-looking pieces of the Skylab that fell to Earth near Balladonia in 1980. There are also some Aboriginal artefacts, some unique musical items, old communications equipment, and agricultural machinery. The museum is open from 1:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Thursday to Sunday during the summer season. You can contact the museum on 08 9083 1580 or visit their website. The museum generally closes during the winter months, but may open during school holidays. On Windich Street, you'll find the Adventureland Park and Miniature Railway. The Miniature Railway is supposed to open on weekends from October to April, during the hours of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The railway is quite extensive, with its own station, railway engines and sheds. To find out more, visit the Miniature Railway Facebook page. We'll put links to all the attractions we can find below this video. We're not entirely sure about the current status of the Miniature Railway, as their last post on Facebook was in 2023. Located in the Port Authority Park is the grave of Tommy Windich. Tommy was an Aboriginal guide and tracker who worked on expeditions with men like John Forrest, Alexander Forrest and Charles Cook Hunt. Tommy was born in the Albany area, but was working near Esperance when he fell ill and died. A plaque on Tommy's grave pays tribute to him. There are many other attractions that make the area a magnet for tourists, including the Great Ocean Drive, Pink Lake, Wind Farm, D'Entrecasteaux Memorial and the Stonehenge replica. Esperance may be a long drive from Perth, but it's one of the places in WA you should really make the effort to get out and explore. With the beautiful backdrop of the Great Ocean Road, it's now time to have a look at some of the early history of the area. Katanning, and don't quote me on the pronunciation of that, sailed past this area in 1672 on the Gould Zeepaard, which translates to Golden Seahorse. Dutch records state the following about the exploration. In the year 1627, the south coast of the Great Southland was accidentally discovered by the ship Gould Zeepaard. On September 28, 1791, the French ships L'Esperance and Recherche left Brest on an expedition to explore the south coast of Australia. They were caught in a storm off the Australian coast during December 1792 and sought shelter in a bay that they named after the ship L'Esperance. The French explored the coast until January 3, 1793, naming many features, including Cape Le Grand, named after Citizen Le Grand. The ships then sailed east to Tasmania. Matthew Flinders mapped the coastline in 1802 and named both Thistle Cove and Lucky Bay. Edward John Eyre came through the area in 1841 after crossing the Nullarbor. The region was known by the Aboriginal people as Gabi Kaili, which is supposed to mean place where water lies down like a boomerang. It was a popular area with whalers and sealers in the early years. The coastline was dotted with temporary settlement sites that these men used during the off-season. There was early conflict with local Aborigines, as the whalers were prone to kidnapping Aboriginal women, and much hatred was generated due to this practice. In 1848, John Septimus Roe led an expedition to the area. The area was settled in 1864 by the Dempster brothers, although one source quotes it as 1863, but we believe 1863 is the date the brothers first explored the area, and the later date is the date they arrived with stock. Leases were granted in 1866. The Dempsters brought sheep, cattle and horses down from Northam. They took up over 300,000 acres, and were encouraged by new liberal land regulations that allowed land to be taken up and work rent-free for 4 years. The brothers built a homestead that still exists today. It's located at 155 Dempster Street and is listed on the National Estate. The building is privately owned, but can be viewed from the street. In April 1870, an expedition across the Nullarbor to Adelaide was led by John Forrest. They stopped briefly at the Dempster property, before continuing on what was to be a very successful mission, reaching Adelaide in August. Forrest said of the Esperance Plains, If water could be procured on the tableland, it would be the finest pastoral district in Western Australia. Prophetic words, as it turned out. Soon after Forrest's departure, Campbell Taylor established a farm called Linburn that was the first settlement east of Esperance. In 1876, the telegraph line reached the area and a repeating station was built. In 1879, a police station was erected, and one of the first investigations was into the murder of John Moyer by two natives. Moyer had arrested the two men in connection with thefts, but they'd had some assistance in getting their chains off and killed Moyer when his attention was elsewhere. The following year, John Dunn was also murdered, and the culprits were captured and sent to Albany for trial. In 1890, William Moyer found gold in the area, but little came of it until more gold was found further north. Maybelle, Great Dundas and Scotia were some of the rich deposits discovered. When gold was discovered around Kalgoorlie in the 1890s, Esperance became an important port, with many prospectors passing through on their way to riches or ruin. The route from Esperance to Kalgoorlie was quicker and easier than that from Perth, and William Moyer was one of the first to see the possibilities this offered. He started bringing in goods for transport to the booming goldfields. Esperance was named after that French frigate, l'Esperance, and is said to be the French word for hope. The town site was gazetted in 1893. By 1894, the first school had been established, and the first jetty followed in 1895. In the same year, the Esperance Chronicle began printing newspapers, and the following year, the Esperance Times set up in opposition. A brewery opened in 1896, but a rail link from Perth to the goldfields was completed, and much of the business then went away from Esperance, as it was now easier to travel by rail all the way to Kalgoorlie. A railway to Salmon Gums was completed in 1925, and 2 years later, the link to Norseman was completed, meaning that a rail link now went all the way to Kalgoorlie and from there to Perth. But by this time, Esperance had reverted to a quiet rural community. The area was initially opened up for farming in 1912, but the soil proved to be very poor, and by 1935, more than 3/4 of the farms had been abandoned. Many people still saw the area's potential, and an agricultural research station was established, and first experimental crops were sown in 1950. An American company negotiated a deal with the government to open up 1.5 million acres, but when the first crop failed in 1957, they began to hand back or sell land, and eventually control passed to another company. With the introduction of fertilizers and trace elements in the 1950s, the land around Esperance became hugely productive. And from then to 1964, the number of farms increased from just 40 to 570. Farming remains one of the mainstays of the region today. In 1961, a plan for a larger port was proposed, and this was to bring even more commercial possibilities to the region. Unfortunately for the town's residents, it was also to bring lead poisoning to the town in 2006, when dust from the lead shipments contaminated water supplies due to inefficient handling. Thankfully today this has been cleaned up, and there is no danger to the public.